The opinions and suggestions expressed on the following program are solely those of the participants and are not necessarily endorsed by KRMG, Cox Media Group Incorporated, or the program sponsors. This following program is sponsored by Causeway, LLC. Information in this broadcast is not intended as an investment, tax, or financial advice. Matthew Moore is not a licensed investment advisor and speaks solely from his experience and opinions. All information in this broadcast is for entertainment or educational purposes only. Matthew Moore, Causeway, LLC, and Cox Media Group Tulsa are not responsible for the success or failure of any person's investment decisions or purchases. Matthew Moore, Causeway, LLC, and Cox Media Group Tulsa makes no and expressly disclaims all representations, warranties, and guarantees with respect to this broadcast and its sponsors. Investing in any market is inherently risky and can be financially dangerous. Invest at your own risk. Gather knowledge in the world of cryptocurrency right now on 102.3 KRMG, Tulsa's news and talk. Welcome to Cryptocurrency with Matthew J. Moore. Matthew is locally based right here in Tulsa. Questions, comments, concerns? Call 918-460-5764 or send us an open mic using the KRMG app. Now, here's Cryptocurrency with Matthew J. Moore.
Good Sunday evening to you. My name is Russell Mills. It is a pleasure to welcome you to this week's edition of Cryptocurrency with Matthew J. Moore, episode number 57. We just keep racking them up, and this is going to be a good show. We're going to talk about, is this the monetary system for you? I mean, does that dollar bill in your pocket symbolize anything to you? It's essentially the promise of the government that, yeah, they'll back up the value of that piece of paper. Well, maybe trusting the government hasn't gotten you very far in life. Maybe you prefer to be an independent kind of person. You might want to think about looking into cryptocurrencies. Just one of the little things that we may discuss today during the show with our host, Matthew J. Moore. Hello, Matt.
Hey, Russell. Yeah, that's right. Every Sunday we get to have some great conversations with some great people, and I want to welcome back all the local and don't forget the global Bitcoiners, because our show does get heard from lots of people. If you're hearing this broadcast, you, my friends, like we were indicating, you are the real plebs taking back control. But how so, Matt? How does Bitcoin do that? Well, it's because Bitcoin is empowering. It's a tool for the everyday Joe. Yeah, I'm an everyday Joe. Maybe you're an everyday Joe. It's a tool that will transform the world and give you personal monetary sovereignty and maybe even digital property rights. That is why we do this show each and every week, and every Sunday we bring you one of America's only radio shows dedicated to this topic. And we hope that you'll take this epic journey with us, because don't get me wrong, you will not regret going on this road with us. There's tons of great conversations, a lot of questions, and we try to bring you as many answers as we can with some of the leading voices in the space. So stick around. And, if you're wondering to yourself, well, if this is such a great tool for, myself as an individual, and if it's got these properties that maybe give me a little bit more sovereignty over my life and my money, well, is the government really going to allow it? Well, regulations, legislation, they're all coming. It's been all over the news the last few years. But how do we need to view these developments? Are they all bad? Or will some actually be good for Bitcoin? Well, as you might already know, 2021 and 2022 have been some big years for Bitcoin for different reasons. And that is why we want to bring you a giant of a guest today. And I promise you won't regret tuning in and listening to what he has to say. He's a person who has literally been on the forefront of policy and legislation nationwide. But before we dive into it with our guest today, I want to introduce you to the person that I might trust the most if I had to. If I had to hand over my Bitcoin private keys. He is my co-host and good friend, Eric Cooper. Eric, welcome back to another episode, my friend.
So your private keys aren't the one, the picture that I sent you here a couple days ago, right? It was, you would have loved it, Russell. It was somebody had their private key card, and it was never going to give you up, never going to let you down, little Rick Astley.
Yeah, and a bunch of lyrics on there.
So pretty great. But Matt, yes, I love it. And again, tonight's guest is he is a megastar, right? That's the big thing. It's a huge for our show. And on the line with us right now is Dennis Porter, and he is the CEO and co-founder of the Satoshi Action Fund. This is a nonprofit, and that's I can get behind this one every day of the week. He goes to educate lawmakers and regulators on Bitcoin mining. Some would say that his crew are going on the offensive for Bitcoin. So Dennis, I appreciate you, brother, for being with us. Welcome to the show. Please introduce yourself in your own words and tell us a little bit about what it means to go on the offensive for Bitcoin.
Yeah, absolutely, guys. Well, thank you, Eric and Matt, for bringing me on the show, and what an incredible introduction. I will try to live up to that intro there for the audience here. But yeah, my name is Dennis Porter. I created Satoshi Action Fund because I saw a serious weakness in the policy approach to Bitcoin and Bitcoin mining. It's a relatively small industry, Bitcoin mining itself. The crypto industry broadly is growing in size. We're starting to get a seat at the table in DC. But to put it into perspective, the entire crypto industry, including Bitcoin mining, but all the way up to things like Coinbase, barely spent $10 million on lobbying efforts last year. Whereas like the entire lobbying industry spent upwards of almost $4 trillion. So we are a very, very small player in a very, very big game. We are really fortunate because of some of the people that are in this space to be able to have a seat at the table. But I created Satoshi Action Fund as a way to start going on the offense instead of just playing defense. A lot of times Bitcoin mining is under attack. People kind of have this misunderstanding that it is a problem. In New York, they're trying to ban it. In Washington State, they're trying to raise rates. China banned it. The European Union is trying to figure out how to ban it. And so I said to myself, we got to stop playing defense. I don't know if you've ever played a game of soccer before, but there's usually there's a time when you play defense and there's a time when you go on offense and score points of your own. And so that's the purpose of Satoshi Action Fund, is to go on the offense, score points for Bitcoin mining, and start to let the United States adopt this nascent tech infrastructure.
So we understand here at the show, and people who've heard your work, you're focused on Bitcoin mining and positive Bitcoin policy. But how did these two things collide for you in your own journey? Is there a backstory to this?
Yeah, it's a great question, right? Ever since I became a Bitcoiner in 2017, I found out about Bitcoin from a friend. He told me that it was perfectly anonymous internet money. And I said, no way, that's not possible. And began in my journey to disprove him, which I kind of did, right? We all have come to find out that it's not perfectly anonymous money, although there is some privacy gains over the current financial system. But in my effort to disprove that, I found there were a lot of other things I really liked about Bitcoin. So just went all in. I wasn't that kind of person that took 2 or 3 or 4 times to be told about it. Immediately started to mine Bitcoin, just very small scale. I tried to figure out how to code so I could build an app. Like, I was trying to do anything possible to add value to the network, to be able to increase the usability of the network. None of those things panned out. I never ended up scaling up my mining operations. I never ended up learning to code. I quickly remembered why I hated school. I'm probably the only double dropout you know about. I went to school, high school, dropped out, got my GED, went to college, and dropped out there as well. Just not fit for that type of environment. But have a background in politics. I've been a political junkie my entire life. Also have a career in politics. So I was a campaign manager. I did opposition research, grassroots organization. And I took all of those skills and applied them to Bitcoin. And that's kind of where my career really started to take off in the space. Oftentimes, people tend to take what they have learned outside of the Bitcoin world, and when they learn to apply it to the Bitcoin world, pretty incredible things can happen. So that's kind of the combination of my political career and just being a Bitcoiner and wanting to do something great for Bitcoin and the people that are holding on to this incredible asset.
So can you give us a little bit more about the Satoshi Action Fund? Because you made a comment, nationwide, there's a lot of different opinions, with New York trying to shut it down. China did it 37 times already. And then, Texas is, winning. Senator Lummis is winning. How's the response been to the efforts?
It's been incredible, honestly. There is this perception that Bitcoin mining or Bitcoin can't survive in the United States, that we're trying to go after it. And there are people going after it. You see what happened in New York, which originally was a 2-year ban straight up of all Bitcoin mining. And fortunately, a lot of great organizations and individuals who all need to be, given praise and a pat on the back and told to keep going and keep working hard to defend Bitcoin. But it got watered down to, what is essentially behind the meter only fossil fuel usage, which was a positive step in the right direction. Now we're waiting to see if the governor will sign that bill. We also see the Biden administration seemingly being very anti-Bitcoin. I've spoken to people in the Biden administration, and it could be a lot worse than it is today. But on the other side of that coin, we have a lot of states that want to move in the right direction. And we are very fortunate to live in a republic, right? We have states' rights. We have seen this movement take place in a lot of different industries. And I think it can happen with Bitcoin mining. And there's a lot of states that do. They see the benefits. They see the potential to bring jobs, investment, innovation, grid stability, and enhancing renewables. They want to bring that to their state. but they don't really know quite how to do it. It is a little complex. It's very easy to say, I'm going to ban something. You just say, let's pass a bill to ban something. But how do you actually attract this nascent tech infrastructure? And that is the purpose of Satoshi Action Fund. We are helping to educate policymakers on the benefits of Bitcoin mining. And that includes regulatory people as well. And then from there, we actually craft model policy that is informed by a variety of experts. We have grid experts, we have energy experts, environmental experts, policy and regulatory experts helping us to craft this model policy so that we can go to the policymakers and regulators and say, hey, you're convinced, you like Bitcoin mining, you see the jobs, investment, innovation it can bring. Here's a bill that you should consider and you should put forward for the people of Oklahoma so that you can start to bring this great tech infrastructure to your state. So that's it in a nutshell. That's what we do. We educate and then craft model policy that we advocate for.
Interesting stuff. I'm sitting here thinking about, the guy that 120 years ago was making saddles and realized the saddle industry was going away. So he learns how to make custom leather upholstery for cars, right? But you got to figure out how to move with the times. And Dennis has done just that. He's invented a new career for himself. Outstanding. Hey, we're going to be right back with more of Cryptocurrency with Matthew J. Moore. Quick time out. You're listening to 102.3 KRMG, Tulsa's News and Talk. Welcome back to Cryptocurrency with Matthew J. Moore. I'm Russell Mills. The conversation this evening is with a gentleman from the Satoshi Action Fund. His name's Dennis Porter. And if you're wondering, this is the intersection of where the world of Bitcoin meets the world of government. Somebody's got to build that bridge, and he's working on it. It's interesting stuff. And the conversation being led by the guy to my immediate left and the host and namesake of the show, Matthew J. Moore.
That's right. We are building bridges and hopefully kind of giving you some clear insight on how all this works when it comes to Bitcoin. Yes, because we are one of the only radio shows, if not the only, in America doing this and casting a wide net and letting people know about what in the world is going on in this industry, because a lot is happening. It's 1997 and people are starting to use Netscape. I mean, this is kind of how big it is, so that's why we do this. But to help us navigate this playground of conversation is my co-host, Eric Cooper.
Hey, Matt, you know what you do in the playground? You have some fun. And,
that's right.
We have a lot of fun here. So, again, we're at episode 57. If you need to go back, you can find any of our past episodes, KRMG On Demand. You can go to Google Podcasts, Spotify, Apple, krmg.com, YouTube, everything. You can find it pretty much anywhere. So you want to go back and find out a little bit about how we are helping with blockchain technology get degrees overseas. Go back and listen to one of our past episodes, and you'll hear all kinds of cool stuff.
Yeah, we cover a lot of different topics. And if you were wondering, like, how in the world are we able to do this radio show and keep talking about Bitcoin? Because there's a lot that goes into it, but it's mostly because of our epic sponsors. The sponsor that is keeping us going right now, we met them a couple years ago down in the Bitcoin conference in Miami, and a wonderful group of people. But Eric, can you share to the audience a little bit about our sponsor today?
Absolutely. Our segment's brought to you by Hedge. And if you don't have a strategy to obtain your cryptocurrency on a regular basis, you need to get your dollar cost averaging set up through Hedge, right? Again, so what about getting all or even part of your paycheck in Bitcoin? Hedge is revolutionizing how you can get paid. Hedge makes it easy to automatically convert your pay into crypto. Whether you're an employer or an employee, you can get started in 4 easy steps. Start getting paid in Bitcoin, Ethereum, or Litecoin. Crypto is a long-term play, so you need to start your strategy today. I'd have started a couple days ago if I were you, but Hedge is here to make it easy to stack them sats month after month. What are you waiting for? Start living life on the Hedge. Get started at gethedge.io. Once again, gethedge.io.
Waiting is for losers.
There we go.
But hey, if you want to be a winner, here's where you can win, okay? We're going to give away, because of our sponsor, $200 worth of Bitcoin. And that $200 obviously can transform into much, much more as far as purchasing power goes, because the Bitcoin number goes up. right, over a long period of time. And if you go to my website, mattjmoore.com, and you scroll down to my resource section, you'll see a button that says Get Hedge. Yeah, you want to click that. Sign up for Hedge, and that's the key part. Sign up and start using Hedge, right? Not just signing up, but using Hedge. And you can allocate a portion or all into Bitcoin. It's really up to you. It's little or as much as you want. And, keep in mind that when using Hedge, this is the really cool part. You skip the exchange experience altogether, and it can go directly to a self-custody wallet that you own, which, if you haven't been paying attention to this bear market and some of the catastrophes that's been going on with exchanges, and hopefully you didn't learn the hard way, you want to be in control of your money, right?
Not that would happen.
I know, right? A lot of bankruptcies, a lot of things going upside down. But come the 21st of August, I'm going to draw a winner and send that $200 worth of Bitcoin. It's really, really that easy. So please go use my referral link at my website at mattjmoore.com. You'll see it on that resource section. And if you have any questions about it, you can always just message me on my website. So
that's right.
Yeah, go ahead, Eric.
All right, Matt. So I want to bring back our guest, Dennis Porter, back into the conversation. This man is piloting a great place. He's the CEO and co-founder of the Satoshi Action Fund, which is a nonprofit educating lawmakers, regulators on Bitcoin mining. Dennis, again, I want to start back with this question. It's from my understanding that you've been following U.S. Senator Lummis and her efforts in the Senate closely. Give us a little of your thoughts and what she's trying to do, and where are we in the process?
Yeah. Hey, by the way, you guys, great show. Really enjoy listening in, and you guys are nailing it on some of this Bitcoin education. There's a lot of people that should be listening to the show. A lot more people should be listening and tuning in. But with regards to Lummis, I tend to stay focused on the state side, but there's two things that I really love that she is attempting to do with her recent bill that she's done with Senator Gillibrand. And those two things are the de minimis. The de minimis is essentially trying to say, okay, if you spend $200 in Bitcoin, you can do it without any sort of capital gains tax, which is really important because in order for Bitcoin to be used as money, I think you need to get rid of capital gains tax in order for it to be effective. The other one is it goes after the double taxation that's taking place on Bitcoin miners right now. Currently, Bitcoin miners are, in my opinion, being illegally taxed by the IRS. And the reason for that is because they are viewing mining rewards as income. And that is very different from any other commodity in the world. So like if you dig gold out of the ground, if you harvest some wheat that you grew, you are not taxed at the moment when you dig the gold out of the ground or when you harvest the wheat. You're taxed when you sell it. Unfortunately, that's not true for Bitcoin miners. They get taxed at the point of when they mine the reward. And also they get taxed again if there's any sort of gain there. They get another capital gains tax on top. So it's double taxation. It's wrong. They should get rid of it. And I love that Lummis is taking care of it.
Yeah, it is. It's the efforts to try to get positive legislation through is can be challenging sometimes. I know it personally. In 2019, I helped author some of the first pro-Bitcoin bills here in Oklahoma, and reached out to Caitlin Long and kind of modeled most of our bills after the ones that passed in Wyoming. And we haven't been successful yet, but the key word is yet. And I do think the important part is definitely at the state level first and foremost. But Dennis, here's my question to you. I often speak at some city chambers and community organizations, and I often hear these comments, these arguments, and the last one I think it was at a Rotary Club I was speaking at last week. I literally got into a debate with a guy. He's like, "There's no way the U.S. government is going to allow for this to actually be a thing," and literally, there's a lot of misinformation out there. But what would you say to people who are worried about the U.S. government banning Bitcoin?
Yeah, sure. We could try and stop it. We could try to do what China has done, but I think that would be a massive mistake. We were the first to fully adopt the internet and the tech industry, and we have added trillions of dollars to our economy because of it. We have the same opportunity in front of us with Bitcoin and Bitcoin mining. It's basically a no-brainer to be ahead of everyone when it comes to tech and internet adoption. And I think it's the same thing when it comes to Bitcoin. We should be ahead of everyone on Bitcoin adoption. My last quick point here would be when was it ever a good idea to copy China, right? Like China banned Bitcoin mining in their country. They're also like a tyrannical communist country. Of course, they want to ban something that expands freedom.
Yeah, allegedly, right? So what would you say, in your opinion, is the biggest threat, if there is one?
It's hard to say, what is the greatest threat to Bitcoin? Bitcoin mining is simply a protocol, just like the internet. So it can be suppressed. Countries have done that, but even in China with the Great Firewall, like the internet still exists, right? So I don't think Bitcoin can really be destroyed. What I'm more concerned about is the potential threat to the United States. We face a declining dollar and declining influence around the world. We can sit back and watch as our geopolitical enemies continue to grow their influence, or we can jump on board for the next 50 years of innovation and money and energy that Bitcoin has to offer. If we do that, we can potentially leapfrog into the future, just as we did with the internet.
Love it. Well, here's the thing, guys. We got probably a minute before we got to go to break here, but these are all things that we like to talk about and unpack, because these are conversations that matter. These are ideas that need to be discussed in public forum, in kind of like a town hall, right? Mm-hmm. And when I go to these events, and especially I'm sure when Dennis goes to some events and he speaks, there's a lot of misinformation, and having Dennis come on and share his thoughts, and even the power grid. People are always complaining about, oh well, I don't know if Bitcoin's growth is going to support the power grid, or the power grid can support it. Well, that's for a whole nother discussion. We might talk about that in the next segment. But this is just a perfect example of, hey, let's hash out these ideas. Let's let the best ideas win.
And
right?
they will. And the marketplace will out. And I don't think anybody's going to be able to stop this. China, United States, Martians maybe, if we get invaded from outer space. They might be able to. Hey, we got to take a quick time out, get you caught up on the news. You're listening to Cryptocurrency with Matthew J. Moore on 102.3 KRMG. Welcome back to Cryptocurrency with Matthew J. Moore. I'm Russell Mills. Thank you so much for tuning in, part of your Sunday evening. Going to stay hot this week. You might get a little sprinkle here and there, and I'll just give you the warning. Those summertime pop-up rain showers sometimes turn into windstorms. So just kind of keep your eyes out this week. And, of course, keep it tuned here. We'll keep you apprised. All right, what's the weather like out there in the world of cryptocurrency? Well, frankly, it's a little stormy right about now, has been. But you know what? It's still there. And much like the weather, it's going to be with us for a long time. And we're going to stay on the air talking about it with this guy, the host of our show, Matthew J. Moore.
Hey, Russell, that's right. Yes, it might be hot outside, and the cryptocurrency market might be dull. Maybe crypto winter is over, but even if it starts heating up, the great news is those orange pills, they don't melt. So, and we like to dish those out, get people involved in Bitcoin. If you don't know that reference, orange pill, we're basically orange pilling people, letting them know the great wonders of what Bitcoin can do for the world and even for your personal life. And on the line, if you've missed the last few segments, and we've in the studio with me is my co-host Eric Cooper. I'm not going to forget you this time, I promise.
Okay.
There's
Never
been a couple
give you up.
times. I know. I promise I won't forget to introduce you. But if you heard him giggling, that was Eric, everybody. But if you missed the last few segments, we've been talking with Dennis Porter. He's the CEO and co-founder of the Satoshi Action Fund. And before we went to break, we were talking about, I briefly mentioned some policy in Oklahoma that I had worked on in the past. But Dennis, I believe that you have some stuff that you've actually been working on that might be related to Oklahoma.
Yeah, that's exactly it. We have been working diligently to craft policy that we feel like can be extremely effective. Satoshi Action is highly state and regionally focused, and we want to create win-wins for the state of Oklahoma, the ratepayers, utilities, Bitcoin miners, and environmentalists. We feel like that is totally possible with Bitcoin mining. We have a suite of model policies we're working on. We found that states and regions that want to adopt Bitcoin mining have a difficult time doing it effectively. That is where Satoshi Action Fund comes into play. One bill in particular that we are very excited about is our orphaned oil well bill. This bill will help clean up the long-standing problem of orphaned oil wells in the state of Oklahoma. Oklahoma has almost 16,000 orphaned oil wells under the control of the state. It's an environmental catastrophe. This means that the state has to pay for the cleanup costs, which ultimately means the people of Oklahoma have to pay. Fortunately, there is an innovative opportunity available to fix this problem. Bitcoin miners can come in and use the methane that is coming out of these orphaned oil wells by converting it to electricity and mining Bitcoin with that electricity. Once the well is no longer economical, or maybe there's a period of time where the state has set where they're allowed to mine the Bitcoin with the methane, the miners will then be required to cap off the well, ending the environmental problem. So we are super fortunate. Last point here is that we're very fortunate to be doing this at the exact same time that the federal government is giving out grants to fix this problem. So the federal government is giving Oklahoma within the infrastructure bill $25 million to fix this problem. When you combine that with the mining, you can quickly see what a unique opportunity is currently available to Oklahoma to end this environmental catastrophe for good.
Well, it's no doubt that states like Oklahoma are just primed places, perfect places for the Bitcoin mining industry. And in a tweet that you had posted some time ago, you had put, it was a graphic of the top 10 states for Bitcoin mining, and I think Oklahoma was rated number 3 in there. In your personal opinion, do you think our state here is positioned to benefit greatly to this new age of digital energy? I mean, we do have an abundant and cheap energy, much like Texas.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. Not only does Oklahoma have a vast opportunity with orphaned oil wells, it also has an incredible amount of wind as it sits within that wind corridor that travels up from Texas and all the way north into the Balkans. Wind farms the problem with wind farms is they only create power when the wind is blowing. This means they often create power when no one needs it, or they also don't create enough power generation during peak demand, which is typically around the middle of the day when people come home from work. What Bitcoin mining can do is it can come in and it can monetize that excess power that's created, which can reduce rates for ratepayers and provide other positive things for renewables. And it will also enable the expansion of more wind and batteries without placing the burden on ratepayers. Bitcoin miners can also shut down when there isn't enough wind generation, again, keeping prices low for ratepayers. So it's kind of this perfect solution for the renewable industry. And you guys have a lot of renewables there in Oklahoma.
A little bit. You kind of touched on this earlier, Dennis, but in one tweet you said that you think zero capital gains tax is the future for Bitcoin transactions. Can you share your thoughts about that?
Yeah, I mean, it's really simple. I think that Bitcoin is the best form of money on the planet. And although it is highly volatile today, there will be times when it is not. So in order for us to really make the best of this new money, we need to start to remove capital gains taxes. The reason why is because if you want to use Bitcoin as money today, you'll have to track every single transaction for the purpose of tracking your gains and losses for tax purposes, right? Imagine doing that today with the dollar, trying to track every time you buy a coffee, every time you pay for rent, every time you buy groceries. It's a ridiculous barrier to our ability to adopt Bitcoin as money. And so I think it needs to be removed because it will remove having to track that, which is really the biggest problem, is the accounting problem.
So, usually when people get really bullish, they've had some revelation that really just strikes them about Bitcoin. Tell us a little bit about, what the biggest one that you had and why people need to get more bullish.
Yeah. People definitely need to get more bullish on Bitcoin. I'm always increasing my level of bullishness the more I learn about its potential. And I would say in the last year or 2 years, I've really increased my bullishness around Bitcoin's ability to drive us towards a clean, affordable, energy abundant future driven by free market incentives while simultaneously helping us to clean up the environment. I don't know of a technology outside of Bitcoin mining that can accomplish that. And so that's where a lot of my increased bullishness comes from.
So with nation states and countries, obviously having this conversation, some adopting, some banning. But if you were to take a guess, and this is not a prediction at all, what country do you think is gearing up to do something big with Bitcoin?
I mean, outside of El Salvador, right? I mean, my parents have lived in El Salvador for over a decade, and I've been up close and personal to this adoption that's taking place there because they're on the ground and kind of explaining it to me, right? But outside of El Salvador, I think that there are not very many countries that are as forward thinking as the United States is around Bitcoin. I know that there's a lot of people who would say, oh, that's crazy, like the United States would never adopt Bitcoin. But I think we do have this really unique opportunity given the way that our governance structure has been created. The states have the ability to adopt whatever they want to adopt, right? And you can see that really simply with the marijuana industry, right? Like, even though it's a federal crime, we have almost 40 states now that have passed pro-marijuana legislation. That's just an example, right? Like, now people are saying, no way can Bitcoin and Bitcoin mining be adopted. I'm like, well, they did it with marijuana and it's a federal crime. So I think states are going to lead the way on this issue. And I think that we have a unique opportunity to allow this adoption to occur, but we need to get in front as much as possible. And that's, again, where it comes in with me with Satoshi Action Fund. We're a state-focused advocacy organization, and that's the future that we're fighting for.
Okay, well, let's turn back to energy here real quick. This was a question that I forgot to ask you that I wanted to kind of dive into, which is, one of the arguments that gets brought up a lot too is, well, the grid, it's not going to be able to support this massive growth in Bitcoin because, Bitcoin is this digital energy. It's mimicking gold in many ways, and it's just going to be too burdensome. Now, I've got my arguments and my counterpoints to that, but I wanted to hear yours personally.
Yeah, I mean, I would say it's quite the opposite of that. I would say our grid can't survive without Bitcoin mining. Bitcoin mining has the potential to improve the way we manage the grid in a number of ways, including demand response, frequency response, fixing the problems that renewables create. Today, our grid is crumbling and suffering from the attempts to transition to renewables. Bitcoin mining can come in and help us overcome a lot of those hurdles we face as we attempt to electrify our economy. So anybody that tells me that, Bitcoin mining is going to ruin the grid, it's like, no, it's literally the opposite of that.
Right. Well, we actually have evidence, I think, even in Texas, of it helping the grid. Is that correct?
Yeah. So when the recent heat wave came in, Bitcoin miners elected to shut down. Over 95% of Bitcoin miners elected to shut down due to some important incentive structures that have been built into the grid. And they returned over a gigawatt of power back to the grid during times of peak demand, which ultimately helped save, at bare minimum, a lot of costs to the ratepayers, but could have actually been one of the driving forces that saved the grid that day.
Yeah, well, and here's a thought experiment. Okay, so let's say, we know that Bitcoin wants to find the cheapest energy, and we know that not always the cheapest energy is fossil fuels, and they're in these very remote locations. And so if we've got this incentive structure where the Bitcoin miners are going to be setting up shop in these remote locations and tapping into these resources, these energy resources that were not feasibly economically before, but now they are, and we can monetize them, doesn't that lead to growth to the grid as well?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, this is one of the key parts or benefits of Bitcoin mining is for the first time ever, we have an industry that will go out in front of everyone and buy power from new generation, no matter how remote it is, because Bitcoin mining is 100% location agnostic. It doesn't care where it goes. It just wants to get as close as possible to the cheapest form of energy out there. And we got to think about this from a global perspective as well. Think about the countries in Africa who don't even have electricity to power light bulbs, to turn on a stove. They're still using diesel generators and cooking their food over wood, right? Over wood fireplace. And one of the main reasons why they can't really transition to a world where they have lots of energy is because someone needs to come in and build out the power. But when you build out the power, you need a buyer. Well, unfortunately, a lot of those folks in some of these developing countries, they don't have the assets. They don't have the ability to buy the items that will actually consume the power. Thus, the power never gets built. Well, enter Bitcoin mining. Bitcoin mining can come in no matter where you build power, and it can monetize all of the excess energy that you create until you have time to build out the grid, or you have time for developing countries to start to acquire the items that actually use that power. There's a really great article by Brandon Quittem, and it's called Bitcoin is a Pioneer Species. And I would highly encourage people to read it because it really explains the thing that I'm talking about and this issue of grid connectivity. We have a really big problem with our grid today. We need to build it out immensely. If you're concerned also about reducing greenhouse gases or decarbonizing, like if that's the thing that really gets you going in the morning, like we need to 10x the amount of renewables that we have. However, that's not possible with the current model that we have today, because ratepayers are going to end up getting stuck with the cost of those renewables. If you bring in Bitcoin mining, you can reduce the cost of all of the build out of renewables, and you can stabilize the grid on top of all of that.
So true. So very true. Well, we're getting ready to go here to break, but Dennis, we're going to cover this in the next segment, but tell people where they can find your work if they're just so fascinated with what you're saying.
Yeah, you can find me on Twitter, Dennis Porter. I'm the most popular Dennis Porter on Twitter, fortunately. So you can just search me and you'll find me. But if you want to know the handle, it's Dennis_Porter_. You can also shoot me an email at dennis@satoshiaction.io. I tend to be pretty responsive.
Love it. Love it. Well, guys, we got a lot more to cover when we come back, so I hope you stick around because it's always a stimulating conversation.
Whenever people talk about the electric grid will never be able to handle, Bitcoin, I always think about how the internet was never going to be able to handle streaming video. Remember that?
Yeah.
We had that conversation like 12 years ago. I've got socks that are older than that conversation. And I watch Netflix pretty much every night. Don't know about y'all. Hey, we're going to take a quick time out. We'll be back with more of Cryptocurrency with Matthew J. Moore. You're listening to 102.3 KRMG. Welcome back to Cryptocurrency with Matthew J. Moore. Time is short. I'm going to shut up and give it right to Matt. Let's keep it going, brother. Interesting conversation.
Ooh, that's right. I'm sweating in here because the information is hot. But it's always hot in here. We're always having fun with Bitcoin. And the person who's bringing the heat is our guest, Dennis Porter, today. But I'm going to let my co-host, Eric Cooper, reintroduce him for this final segment of America's best radio show when it comes to Bitcoin.
That's right, Matt. Dennis Porter is the CEO and co-founder of the Satoshi Action Fund, and we've been talking with him about the good and the bad and the ugly when it comes to policy developments for Bitcoin. Dennis, again, thanks for being on here with us, brother.
Yeah, pumped to be here, guys. Really excited to be on the show.
So, Dennis, with your experience, is Bitcoin, is it, you've been kind of rallying the troops, you've been basically a gladiator for policy here. But is this becoming a partisan issue with people? Is Bitcoin bipartisan? Like, why or why not? What's happening here?
I think that Bitcoin is inherently a nonpartisan issue. You could say bipartisan, obviously, both sides. And I have a lot of conversations with people on the left and the right, and they both see the value in Bitcoin and Bitcoin mining. So I don't think that it is a partisan issue, although we do see some of the red states tending to kind of do the outreach first. I think part of it is because, when you don't have control over the federal government, your states kind of get a little more active in trying to figure out new and innovative ways to adopt new technology. I think that when the Democrats are out of office or they're out of power in the federal government, there will be somewhat of a switch and an interest turned towards Bitcoin as they see or try to find new ways to attract new voters and new money. You know how the game is played, right? So I think that that's kind of where we'll see the switch. However, outside of like the political world, on the ground, I don't see any sort of partisan issues at all. In fact, there have been polls and studies done that show that a very large majority of Democrat voters hold Bitcoin and other digital assets.
Which is great.
Yeah, definitely so. Now, I hear a rumor that you might be coming to hang out with us in the 18th for our Tulsa Bitcoin meetup. Are you going to be our speaker?
I guess I'm going to have to fly in. I guess I was told I was doing a Zoom call, so that was the original plan. But I'm definitely going to be in Oklahoma no matter what sometime this year because we are pretty focused on the state. We think there's a real opportunity to put forward some good policy and to pass it and to attract Bitcoin miners. And so if your state does head in the right direction, which it seems like there's a lot of people who want to see it do that, we'll be flying in and trying to do our best to educate everybody about the benefits of Bitcoin mining. But also if you're into the Bitcoin mining space, you got to check out Charlie Spears. He's been launching something new, but keep an eye on it. It's going to be like a Bitcoin mining group. So very excited about his work there.
Oh yeah. He is a regular contributor to this show because I tend to tackle more of the monetary and economic sides. And Charlie, he is a beast when it comes to the mining. So we love having him in studio. So shout out to Charlie for sure. And the rumor, or I should say the game of phone was kind of twisted there. I actually thought you were coming here, but hey, Skype or video chat at the Bitcoin meetup on the 18th. I don't know if we have a location for that yet, so I'll let Charlie spill the beans on that next week. But I'm really looking forward to it. I think it's going to be a great time. And if you want to hear Dennis, I'm assuming you're going to take questions at the next Bitcoin meetup when you're on the video chat.
Absolutely, yeah. You guys make sure you show up to the meetup. I will be doing a little interview and then taking all the questions that I have open schedule, open time. So I'll be there as long as you want me.
We're typically there. You can get a free beverage of the adult variety, and then we do giveaways, and you can hear Dennis. I mean, I don't see the failure to want to come.
Right. Yeah.
I think you might be able to see me too on the Zoom call.
Yes. That too. Well, all right. Well, let's see here. We got probably roughly about 2 minutes.
About 2 minutes.
Yeah, about 2 minutes here. Just for fun, Dennis, in your opinion, what does the future look like for those who can obtain a whole Bitcoin?
Oh, man, it's a bright future. You only have 21 million whole Bitcoins. And today there are over 40 or 50 million millionaires, right? So there's not enough to go around to everyone. And if Bitcoin plays out even a fraction of the way that I and many others believe it will, one whole Bitcoin could be, generational wealth for families. So it's pretty cheap right now. 20,000. What are we at? 23 right now for
something
a whole
like that.
Bitcoin.
Yeah.
Obviously that's not in the range for everybody, but in my opinion, if you can be, I would be doing everything possible to just diligently setting away small amounts of money to Bitcoin and trying to get after that whole Bitcoin, because one day that's going to be a status symbol for sure.
All right, man. One more time. If people want to follow your work, if they want to find out what you're doing and just kind of be a help or just spread the news, where can they find you?
Yeah, main place to find me is on Twitter, Dennis_Porter_ on Twitter. You can also reach out to me via email. If any miners are listening, if any state policy makers or regulators are listening, please reach out. My email, I'm checking it all the time, Dennis@SatoshiAction.io. We are actively trying to connect with people on the ground in Oklahoma to help make sure that you guys have the opportunity to head in the right direction.
Outstanding. And Dennis, when you come to town, man, I'd love to sit down with you in studio and grill you, because I'm a reporter in my spare time. And you've made some really interesting points. So thank you. Great conversation. Thanks to Dennis Porter. Thanks, as always, to Matt and Eric and the whole crew. This is Cryptocurrency with Matthew J. Moore. See you right here next Sunday, beginning at 5. Bye.